Okay, so my name is Chris, and I'm from the Barrie area. So I was an environmental technician. I've been in the environmental industry since I was probably 20. Lots of experience. At the time, I was a driver for a an environmental company. I picked up waste chemicals, hazardous waste, contaminated soils, stuff like that. So I had finished my regular work for the day early, so I got back to the yard a little bit early. My boss had asked me if I could take the yard backhoe that we had, and we just had a couple of steel bins way back in the corner of the yard. They were frozen to the ground, so he wanted to move from one side of the yard to the other. So I brought the backhoe down. I grabbed a scoop of sand with the front bucket. I had it down there. I moved the first bin, no problem. The second bin was giving me a little bit more problems. I couldn't really get it broken free from the ground. Finally got a chain hooked up to it, and I went to give it a pull. The chain snapped what I had it mounted to on the bin that I was trying to move. So I hopped out, I parked the backhoe. I remember, you put the parking brake on, you lower your bucket. I kept the bucket tilted up a bit because I had a load of sand in there. I didn't want it spilling all over the place because it was all ice in the yard. So while I was hooking up the chain, I had my back to the backhoe that I was using. While hooking up the chain, still not really sure what happened, if the brakes failed or if it slid on the ice. But the backhoe rolled down a little bit of an embankment, and I didn't see it coming, and it pinned me against the bin that I was working on, right at the back of the knees. Like I said, I didn't remember, I didn't see it coming, anything like that. I just remember feeling an intense pressure and a ton of pain right away. Looked behind me, and obviously the backhoe was right on top of me. I was pinned up against this bin. At the time, we were having some work done on our building, so I could see some roofers up on the roof. They were, 150, 200 meters away from me at the time. So I started screaming for them. I was yelling as loud as I could for them to help, but unfortunately, I left about four trucks running that I needed moved, so they couldn't hear me over the trucks and the backhoe running. So I spent probably 5 minutes yelling for help from them. Um, and then I guess I was in shock at this time because my first call wasn't for help. It was actually to my wife, to tell her that I wouldn't be home for dinner that night, that I'd gotten a little bit of an accident. Got off the phone with her, and then I called somebody at my work to tell them what had happened. They kind of thought I was joking. I guess I was pretty calm at the time. And then finally the roofers did see me. They came down. Nobody was comfortable moving the backhoe off me just because of how I was pinned. So we waited for the fire department to come. They backed the backhoe off of me, and I don't really remember too much beyond that. I remember the ambulance ride to the hospital. I remember looking down and seeing a pool of blood underneath of me. And I remember little bits and pieces of being in the hospital. I do remember my vascular specialist saying, if you do survive this operation, don't expect to wake up with both your legs. So that was a pretty tough thing to hear, but I woke up the next day, and thankfully, my legs were pretty mangled, but I still had both of them. I mean, as for the care I got in the healthcare system, I'm super happy. They saved my life, they saved my legs. Is there a lot to be desired with the healthcare system? I think there probably is. I've had doctors pretty much straight up say it's not really about your quality of life. It's just, we kept your legs. I I I don't know. It's one of those things. It's kind of a loaded question for me because I'm so thankful for what the healthcare system has done, but there's been times where it's just left me so overwhelmed and so frustrated, just trying to find answers and not really getting them. I mean, I understand it was a pretty traumatic injury, but most of the time if I go see a doctor, they're just like, this is kind of to be expected. You got hit by a backhoe, be happy that you still have your legs. Um, I was a little bit disappointed with the WSIB therapy policy, whatever you want to call it. So I spent close to a year in pretty intensive physical therapy. I needed to learn how to walk again and all that fun stuff. Um, and I mean, the doctors have said, the therapists have said that I would benefit from having weekly physiotherapy sessions just to keep things kind of at least maintained. I'm only 38, so I got a lot of time left. And I was cut off from therapy from WSIB after about a year once they saw me kind of plateau. They weren't getting any more flexion out of my legs. Um, they just kind of said that's it and cut me off. And if I want my own therapy now, I still do my exercises at home all the time. But if I want my own therapy, that's $130 an hour, which I mean, being on WSIB, things are already tight as is. So it's not in the cards for me, unfortunately. Um, I did go for some experimental therapies for my nerve issues because of the accident. They weren't really, I don't know, suited for me. I wasn't prepared for them. Um, I've tried lots through the healthcare system. But yeah, like I said, the biggest thing for me is just not getting the answers. Like I understand that there's a lot going on, but it's hard when you just want to know something. They were supportive through the thing. Obviously they're fully aware of, all the decisions that WSIB has made throughout, the course of my claim in the 3 years. Where WSIB has kind of failed me, I've been lucky in the sense that he's kind of stepped up and, paid out of pocket for things to kind of make my life a little bit easier. My first impression of it, I had never needed WSIB my entire working career, so I was pretty naive about the system. My first call, I think, was my second day in hospital. I got a call from my first case manager, with the typical, we're gonna take care of you, all this stuff. And probably by the end of my 3-week hospital stay, like I I already knew what kind of fight I was in for. The first thing that started was just, even just getting me home was like pulling teeth. Like they have their preferred vendor system. So in order for them to secure a hospital bed and transportation and everything that I need, because hey, they have their single source for vendors, everything was delayed. I think I spent an extra day in the hospital because I had nowhere, to stay once I got home. My bedroom, all our living facilities are upstairs. I still struggle with stairs. Um, so right off the hop, it was 3 weeks before I got home from the hospital until they sent out their, um, I guess their ramp people, the people that set up the accessibility ramps, all the transitions in the house. So for 3 weeks, I did have a wheelchair when I got home, but because of the layout of my house, I was stuck in the one room for 3 weeks until that company came in and, retrofitted the house, let's say, temporarily so that I could get around. Um, it hasn't been great. I mean, the first guy was super nice, but since then I kind of shake my head at their decision. I can't understand their reasoning behind some of their decisions. One of the first things I was denied for, I was still in the hospital at the time. It was obviously the middle of winter. I have a large driveway. It took me 2 hours to blow every morning. I didn't mind doing it. Um, so I said like, I could I get some help with just, you know, snow maintenance or whatever, just so I can get in and out of the house when the time comes. And I was told that I wasn't injured enough because I could ambulate from my bed to the commode, which was about 3 feet beside me, that I didn't qualify for any assistance in the activities of daily living allowance or anything like that. As well as while I was still in the hospital, I was denied PSW care on the basis that because my wife works from home, that she would be able to leave me a sandwich in the morning, empty the commode whenever she got the chance at lunchtime or whatever, plus look after a 2-year-old and run her own business. I've been left in Toronto. I went for a second surgery about a year after the first. WSIB, I guess, kind of dropped the ball on making my hotel reservations, so I was left in Toronto with no hotel reservations. It was the weekend, so you can't talk to anybody from WSIB. Thankfully, we had enough money on the credit card still, so we were able to get our own room. But yeah, the treatment from WSIB has been anything but stellar. And I know a lot of it too. I know it's not the person at WSIB, it's their policies. But I still don't know how some of these people at WSIB can sleep at night, like just knowing how they treat injured workers. I mean, obviously, physically is the biggest impact for myself. But I mean that definitely has a trickle down effect on everybody in your life. I mean, my wife had to take on so much extra. I feel like my son was 2 years old at the time of the accident, so he was a little too young to understand exactly what was going on. But even now, I feel like he's been robbed of so much. He's had to take on, extra responsibility that, a 4-year-old shouldn't have to. As for me, I mean, I feel like I miss out on so much again having a 4-year-old. Like I'm limited to I walk with a cane. I can't ride a bike. I can't, chase my kid around, wrestle with them, stuff like that. That's something that I've got to, come to grips with. And it's still hard every day. Financially, I know WSIB covers 85% of your pay, but there's so much more that isn't covered. Like I said before, like the snow plowing. I've always been a handy guy. I've been a contractor pretty much all of my life. I went from, doing everything around here to I had to hire somebody to change the furnace filter in my crawl space the first year. Um, just stuff like that I can't do now. Financially, obviously, it's huge. My earning capacity is basically gone. I'm limited to what I get through WSIB plus whatever, their measly cost of living allowance raises every year. But there's so much more than just lost wages that comes along with an injury. I honestly think it would drive someone crazy. Like until you've actually had to deal with the WSIB, I don't think anybody can really understand that the stress of all of this like brings you. I remember when I got my NEL check, it was I think the day after my birthday, sitting in the car opening it and my wife just breaking down crying because it was a slap in the face. Like I couldn't even buy a used car and that was supposed to replace, I know it's not supposed to replace any sort of income or anything, but it just felt like a slap in the face. Like, I've given up all of this. I've worked all my life. Now I've given up pretty much everything. And this is, you know, what they give you. Okay. The thing that really irks me about the rebates and how the WSIB seems to be prioritizing the employers. So because no charges were laid in my accident through the Occupational Health and Safety Act, that meant that my employer was eligible for the WSIB rebate. Meanwhile, I'm still fighting 3 years on. I'm still fighting for, the home modifications that should have been done 3 years ago. There's still lots that many of us injured workers are fighting for, and to be giving this money back to the employers while so many of us are, struggling to put food on the table is just to me, it's completely wrong. Don't take safety for granted. I mean, I always thought, it'll never happen to me. I've had so many close calls throughout the years. And it honestly just takes a split second and through no fault of your own, just your world can change.